Welcome to Future Takes, a series where we ask people for their views on achieving a more reconciled island of Ireland in the years ahead. Well, Colin McCann, it's great to talk to you.
Such a pleasure, thank you.
You are from Dublin, living in New York for many years, but you spent your summers as a child in Garva in County Derry. Can you tell me about those days?
They were splendid days. My mum was from Garva, but I grew up in Dublin, and I used to love coming up on the bus. Those wonderful summer days when we ran around the farm, and I felt very free when I was up there. And it was always curious to me because growing up and going to school in Dublin, other people weren't quite as engaged with what was going on up north, but I was very much, I was interested in everything that happened. And all of the good stuff was obviously leavened by some of the bad stuff, and I'll never forget some of those terrible moments that would come across the TV or would happen while I was up there.
Were you alone in this curiosity, this interest that you had in the north amongst people of your own age at that time?
Surprisingly, I was largely alone in that. It wasn't until the early 1980s and things erupted with the hunger strikes that some of my peers down here began to sit up and take more notice and to talk about things a little bit more. But in general, in the 1970s, it was that grand silence that surrounded things.
Was it apathy? Was it disinterest?
I don't think it was apathy. I think it was fear. And I think there's so much still going on, which is about sowing fear in people, because fear translates itself into economy. Fear translates itself into control. I think that the silence was largely dictated by people who were afraid to speak out. And I think one of the reasons why it's wonderful to start talking now in these supposedly quiet days is that you're going to set the territory, set the pace, and quietly in the background say these are things that are worth talking about. Let's have let's have a certain sort of silence, but not not absolute silence that equates to fear.
So is storytelling key to true, meaningful reconciliation?
I think so. I've dealt with people in various parts of the world, and they often say to me, look, we don't have to love each other. We don't even have to necessarily like one another, though we hope that we could. But we must understand one another. And to understand one another, we have to know each other's history. We have to know each other's fears. We have to know each other's cultural inclinations, all these things. How does that happen, and where does that happen? It happens best in our stories. And mostly, curiously enough, in our personal stories. Not these vast political tracts or anything like that, but in talking about what it means to be, a young person, from East Belfast or West Belfast, or from Dublin, or in fact from Birmingham, and all of these different places that sort of will hopefully come together in a lattice work of stories that we tell one another. And if we're prepared to do that, I think we pave the way for peace.
We're talking about Future Takes today, this look into the future and asking for a more reconciled island, however it is constituted. What should we give and what could we gain in the years ahead?
Yeah, I think we do live in incredibly exciting times. I think we have to give ourselves a chance. We have to give a lot of respect to others. We have to just take it easy and learn how to listen to not just the other side, because it's not about two sides. It's it's a polygon. There's so many sides going on. So and there are so many others who are involved in this debate. Look, I live in New York. I'm from Dublin, yes, but this matters to me, as an Irishman abroad. But I also think it happens to matter to other peace processes that are going on around the world. People will look at us. And so if we can give respect to the process, give time to the process, and give each other a break, and try to be kind to one another. That seems almost like a cliche, but Henry James, at the end of his life, he was asked, what's the most valuable thing that you learned about the human condition? And he said, well, first thing is that to be kind. And the second thing is to be kind. And the third thing is,
To be kind.
there you go.
And what are your thoughts on identity as we move forward? Because that's an ever-evolving idea as well.
All of these questions are really pertinent to the moment. And again, they're always evolving. It's when you think you are only one thing that it becomes a problem. We're so much more than one thing. We're so much more than Republican. We're so much more than only loyalist. You know, we're so much more than Catholic and Protestant. There's so many different ways that we can exist. You know, whether it be about gender, whether it be about politics, all of these things. If we can acknowledge some of the flux, and this is the job really. I do see artists at the forefront of a lot of this. So a lot of the early change can come from the artists and the young people in the schools.
So this is your opportunity, this is your pitch. If you could talk directly to the powers that be and plead with them to make life better on this island for everyone, how could they, should they go about that?
I don't presume to know any of the answers. I do know that so much of what will be in preparation for the eventual answers, which will keep evolving in themselves, will be in storytelling and acknowledging one another across the supposed divides, dissolving those sort of borders by entering into the messiness of stories and storytelling, and acknowledging one another and our fears and our hurts and our histories, because you can't get forward by just having blindly turning away from the past. We must be able to talk about this. Let's face it, we have had peace without full reconciliation for 26 years now, and we do need a proper sort of reconciliation. I do hope that in another 25, 26 years, people will say, wow, those people actually got it right. That's the way to go forward. I do think it's actually possible. Senator Mitchell said in a speech that within the word impossible is the word possible, and he beseeched the people of Ireland, North and South, to embrace the possible. And I think there's a real value in the sense of believing in that.
On that very positive note, we leave it there.
Thank you so much.